Let's check in with Joseph Lindsley in Ukraine.
That was hit by a missile, which investigations have shown included components made in France. And so we're seeing that the Russians are still very good at getting around all the sanctions and regulations. So,
Joe Lindsley.
Joe Lindsley is quickly becoming an American treasure in broadcasting.
Welcome to Ukraine Bank.
Joe, I saw a response to one of your posts recently. Let me read this because it really impressed me. And you talk about the spirit of the people there so often. I know you enjoyed hearing this. This person wrote, "If I were not born in Odessa, I would move to Kharkiv. Every time when I visited, I was amazed by its greatness and dignity. Wide prospects, big squares, beautiful parks. Kharkiv, considered as educational capital of Ukraine, and people are modest and warm-hearted. Their resistance and willpower will come to historical books. The situation now, though, is critical with power, heating, and water problems." And let's get your take on what's happening today. You're in Lviv today, right, Joseph?
Bob, yes, hello from Lviv, and thank you for sharing those words that someone had posted about Kharkiv City on X. And indeed, I mean, that's one reason why I'm so often in that city. It is, if there were no war, it would be one of the nicest places to live in the world. It's clean. There's an energy there. There's a spirit of there's an entrepreneurial spirit. And, within an hour after a missile strike, people show up to clean up the debris. And it really is incredible how that city keeps going. And Kharkiv it's a bellwether for me. It shows if you can be that close to the Russian border, 30 miles from the Russian border, and come under such frequent attack, and still be a nice place in between those attacks, and still have impeccable parks and new businesses opening. Even now, even in the war, you say, wait a second, this is something worth investing in. These people aren't going to lose. And if we look at the opposite side of that, people who don't hear these stories, the people that don't pay attention to a place like Kharkiv, for example, Elon Musk. And he tweeted on his platform on X, he was saying, talking about the situation in Ukraine. And he says, it was a tragic waste of life for Ukraine to attack a larger army that had defense in depth, minefields, and stronger artillery when Ukraine lacked armor or air superiority. And so he's very critical of what Ukraine has been doing. And he does admit that there's no chance of Russia taking all of Ukraine because he says the local resistance would be extreme in the West. But he posits that the Russians will occupy much of eastern Ukraine, all the way up to the Dnipro River, which is in the middle of the country. That river divides the city of Kyiv. And, if Elon Musk if he listened to a few minutes of stories about Kharkiv, or dare I say, even visited or sent some emissaries to visit Kharkiv, that city in the east, a Russian-speaking city before this full-scale invasion. And if he saw that, he would be, as an entrepreneur, he would be inspired by how these people keep going, keep innovating, even knowing that at any moment in that city, because there really is not proper air defense, and because they're so close to Russia, you can be hit. And this is, it's something that I feel when I'm in Lviv, you can kind of breathe easy a little bit because you're going to have a warning. Very few places are hit here in the city, but in Kharkiv, it's not like that. And the fact that city still is so vibrant and full of life actually proves right now that people like Elon Musk are wrong when they say that places in eastern Ukraine are going to fall and that the resistance will only be in the West. And everyone in Kharkiv with whom I speak feels this deeply. It's obvious, the Russians could not invade that city. They tried in 2014. They tried for a few hours. They seemed to control parts of it, but the people resisted. And that once again, they resisted in 2022. And so what it seems that Russia's strategy is now is to delete the city and to make it untenable. And as I quoted to you last week, even a member of the Russian parliament said this. He said, we're going to keep bombing Kharkiv until everyone leaves. And that's exactly what they're trying to do. And the power situation is still difficult there from those attacks almost 2 weeks ago. But as an interesting note, I've been in Kharkiv so often in 2024. And, it does take a toll. I mean, you get inspired by the people, but those constant attacks, often happening just a few blocks from me, take a toll. And so I went over the weekend to Ukraine's Carpathian Mountains on the river Resistance. It's called the River Opir. where the Ukrainians have been resisting invaders, including the Mongols, for 1,000 years at this very place I was. And it's a very peaceful pocket in the mountains in springtime and sitting on the riverbank. And I said, I'm going to get a good night's rest. And at 6 o'clock in the morning, yesterday, Sunday morning, explosions. I could hear the explosions from the Russians were attacking throughout Ukraine, but in particular, they've been targeting Lviv region. There's a small city outside of Lviv. The Russians are searching for something. They're trying to hit something there. They've been hitting it very frequently these past weeks. And so from my so-called peaceful mountain retreat, I indeed heard those explosions yesterday morning.
Talking about Elon Musk, Joe, he just SpaceX launched more of those Starlink satellites. For a while, they were helping the Ukraine soldiers communicate. Is that still the case?
Indeed, it's still the case. I mean, Starlink has proved essential, especially at the front lines, even with coordination of drone strikes in the Black Sea. So the Ukrainians are grateful for it, but Russians they have access to Starlink as well. And so that's been, Elon that's where the controversy has been. He's been a bit neutral on it, but certainly the Starlink it remains an essential tool for communications. And, and this is, it has enabled Ukrainians to use, as long as they have internet connection, they can do ingenious things. And this is another point that Elon tweeted a few days ago. He said, whether Ukraine loses all access to the Black Sea or not is, in my view, the real remaining question. And it's very interesting that he says it, because actually, that paints the picture as though Ukraine is losing in the Black Sea. Ukraine is not losing in the Black Sea. Again, in the past week, we've had more successes. Ukrainians on March 24th took out 2 Russian landing ships, the type of ships that Russians could use to invade a place like Odessa. And so Elon and many others are missing this key information that Ukrainians are using the technology and using sea drones to attack Russia's Navy, and they're really making it difficult for any Russian ship to spend more than a few hours in the Black Sea. So even despite all the difficulties here, and I think the Russians are clearly trying to hit gas depots and infrastructure, but meanwhile Ukrainians they're very actively working to make the Black Sea a place, and they're exporting more grain in the Black Sea now than they did when they had the deal with Russia brokered by the United Nations. So we see a lot of strength there. And meanwhile, a few days ago, the mayor of Paris, Anne Hidalgo, visited Kyiv. And this is remarkable, because soon there's going to be the Summer Olympics in Paris. And Russian and Belarusian athletes will participate there under a neutral flag. But the mayor of Paris, after visiting Kyiv, she said, I want to tell Russian and Belarusian athletes that they will not be welcome in Paris. She's really making a clear point of this. She doesn't really have the authority to do that, but making a clear statement. And she visited a Ukrainian athletic training facility in Kyiv that was hit by a missile, which investigations have shown included components made in France. And so we're seeing that the Russians are still very good at getting around all the sanctions and regulations. So there's a lot of things moving around these days, but just a reminder of the Ukrainian successes in the Black Sea, and but how even being in the peaceful Carpathians, you can still feel and hear the sounds of war.
And when you talk about the scenery there and Kharkiv and other cities, I keep thinking that if the war ever ends successfully for Ukraine, you can be the country's top vacation tour guide one day. Wouldn't that be something?
That'd be great. Bob, we could do a WGN tour of Ukraine. Would be great
Yeah.
in the time of victory and freedom.
We'll pray for that. Joseph Lindsley, we'll talk to you tomorrow.
Thank you for introducing Ukraine on your social media pages. That's very important, that much more people can get more information about the situation here and how everybody can help Ukraine to stay stronger and to save all the world.
Що сказав?
Well, which side are you on?
На чиїй ти стороні?
Come on now. Oh, which side are you on?
На чиїй ти стороні?